I was almost 10 years old when me and my older brother were fishing on a swamp pond. All of a sudden we saw a woman, all dressed in black, coming from the bog towards our pond. A small black lamb was following her in her footsteps. The strange thing was that these travelers did not go around the pond, but walked straight through it, on the water. The event's supernatural nature dawned on us few weeks later when our mother drowned herself into the pond. Welcome back to Day Talk, fellow talkers, and in this episode we're gonna talk about the omens of death in Finnish ancient beliefs and in Finnish mythology. We have made few episodes back in the day with Dylan, our fellow Canadian, about Finnish mythology, Finnish devils, Finnish poltergeist and such. If you still haven't seen those episodes, please check them out after this one. Also, if you like our content, we would like to ask you to leave us a like by hitting the thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any of our future episodes. Okay, let's talk about the omens of death. Life in the olden times was very fragile and people often died quite young. Every day could have been their last in the claws of wild animals or some nasty disease. People used to pray, "God Almighty, please save us from a sudden death." The better it was if death could have been foreseen beforehand. Death often occupied people's minds, which meant that surroundings and oneself were observed from that perspective. Anything out of the ordinary or an event that reminded people of death might have been an omen of it. Quite often these omens were realized to be such only afterwards. Actually, when they were being interpreted as such. This meant that these were the omens that turned into a reality when omens that didn't turn into reality were quickly forgotten. Generation after generation gathered more and more of these omens that were then transferred forward as stories and tales. Omens of death were either direct or indirect, visions or premonitions. Gathering of Väki, the coming place of death, or around the person who would die, was a logical premonition of the events to come. This was something that the dying person might have not seen himself, and in general, Väki was only being seen by a person with a strong resistance. In Finnish, person had to be lujaverinen. Väki is a supernatural power in Finnish mythology. It was believed by Baltic Finns that Väki resided in natural sights, objects and animals. Some folklorists have stated Väki are in objects, especially ones connected to the world of supernatural. If doppelganger or haltia was seen with Väki, the death was almost certain. Also, a ghostly apparition of a man was being interpreted as a premonition of death. Through our history, animals and omens have been attached together. As the old folks knew, the wilderness and civilization should be kept separate. Nothing good could come out of it if the wild beast would become too familiar with people. Often it would mean death or calamity. In ancient beliefs and stories, animals often represented the omens of death. Arrival of insects or rodents would always mean a disaster or death to the household. People remembered that rats and mice would often appear in the yards and houses before the Finnish Civil War in 1918. It was also known that if a mice ate one's clothes, it meant death. The teller of the following story verified the belief. Mice had chewed a hole through my daughter's apron. I knew that she would die soon. Only a few weeks later, she already lay dead in her grave. All the way up to the modern times, there have been stories and beliefs of birds as messengers of death. The connections between birds and deceased can also be examined through other traditions. One such thing is the belief to offer sacrifices to birds using one's left hand, left being closer to death. If on a Christmas Eve one throws a handful of barleys using their left hand, and comes out of the granary without looking behind, then birds won't eat your crop in the coming summer. This belief is behind the tradition of taking joululyhde to the birds at Christmas time. Then there are dark birds. Black-colored birds were especially bad, which for sure meant either calamity or death. Worst of them were having crows fly over one's yard. If you heard black woodpecker pecking on your house or an owl hooting at a strange time, disaster was coming to you. Crows were known to gather around ungodly persons. The reputation of crows might originate from Scandinavian myths of Odin. Christian beliefs might also have affected on perception of these black birds. It was thought that the black birds were the souls of the damned that have now arrived to gather new souls to hell. Magpies were also seen to be similar creatures. Their coughing laughter were a sign of a coming death for sure. The devil itself might arrive at funerals to fetch their loyal servants to hell. He might disguise himself as a rabbit, fox, or even a squirrel. Sometimes it might also want to take another form. Maybe a black bird. What comes to the wild animals, their too familiar behavior was called as marras, a premonition of soon arriving death. Marras is a Finnish term for death and a different kinds of premonitions of it. Every time when a wild animal entered the house, it was interpreted as a certain mark of death. The border between home yard and a wilderness needed to be kept clear. The breaking of this barrier meant that something extremely bad was about to happen. Pets and animals close to a person could form a special connection between them and a man. They were known to have instincts for a coming events. On another hand, death of such an animal could mean the death of its master. After the fact, the death of a horse was often mean its owner's calamity as well. At least, this was believed to be so. These kinds of omens of death were especially being seen during the holidays such as Christmas or Kekri. See, the supernatural other side and our world were connected in special ways. In our episode of Finnish Halloween, also known as Kekri, we talk about these phenomena. Have you ever seen omens that have come through and turned into reality? Let us know down in the comment section. This has been They Talk. Thanks for joining us, and as always, please leave us a like by hitting thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any of our future episodes. See you next time.